All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another ShareWise webinar. My name is Harry Meyer. I'm one of the investment managers here at the firm. Today, we're very fortunate to be joined by GTI Energy Executive Director and CEO Bruce Lane. As per usual, everyone, we encourage questions. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, by all means, put them in the Q&A box at the bottom. This webinar will be recorded, so if you can't make the whole live presentation, you can find it on our YouTube channel under ShareWise. Without further ado, Bruce, over to you.
Great, thanks for having me on, Harry, and welcome everyone. I'll just make sure I've got my presentation up. I've got a short presentation. I'll whiz through it, probably take me about 10 minutes. It's not designed to tell you the entire story, but hopefully it gives you enough that you get a very good idea about what we're up to. So we're exploring for uranium, and we have found uranium, and we're in the process of expanding our flagship project at Lo Herma, which is in Wyoming, in the Powder River Basin in the United States. So what I will do is try and focus a little bit on Lo Herma, and I'll also just talk about our rights issue offer coming up. So there is a standard disclaimer here. There will be some forward-looking statements in the presentation, so please consider what is said here. I'm not providing investment advice. So I want to focus on a few numbers to background the story. The key one here is this 50 million pound number, and that's the annual demand for uranium required by the US every year. So there's 95 or thereabouts nuclear reactors in the US, and they consume close to 50 million pounds a year. The issue, though, is that they haven't been producing any domestically, as little as 50,000 pounds back in 2023, a little more in 2024, and they're starting to build back, I guess, the supply chain that supplies nuclear fuel, and that's obviously what we're trying to be part of. So the annual global shortfall is estimated to be around 30 to 50 million pounds across the globe for uranium, and you can see that the US on its own consumes about the top end of that. So what's happened in the uranium market, and those that have been following it will understand it's become bifurcated again. We've sort of got the Russian-aligned countries and the West. Another important number is that there are 5 in-situ recovery uranium plants close to us that are either restarted or about to restart, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. We think we're in the #1 jurisdiction, which is Wyoming, for mining uranium in the US. There are 7 permitted facilities within about 110 miles of us. We're about 10 miles away from Cameco's Smith Ranch Highland, which is the largest permitted in-situ recovery uranium facility in the US, and we have 7.4 million pounds of inferred resources so far across our portfolio. We believe that the current long-term contract price, as reported by UxC, which I think is around $80 to $82 at the moment, is high enough for the projects that we have to make money if we can define the right things in the ground. So those numbers just help to set the scene. We've got 4 projects, but they're sort of in 3 locations. Our primary focus is our Lo Herma project in the Powder River Basin. We've got our Great Divide Basin projects, which include Thor, and our Green Mountain project, which is right next to it. They have had drilling on them in the past, both from us and other parties, and they're quite advanced as exploration projects, but they fall in second to our Lo Herma project. And then we have some conventional projects down in the Henry Mountains. I probably didn't talk a little earlier about the difference between in-situ recovery uranium mining and conventional uranium mining. This is probably a good time to do it. So about 60% of the world's uranium is mined using in-situ recovery techniques, and there's 2 streams to that. One is an acid leach, which is what's conducted in Kazakhstan, South Australia predominantly, and in parts of the US, but mostly in the US it's actually alkaline leach, and our projects are in the sort of geology that allows us to alkaline leach. It's a simpler process. The geology is simpler, the metallurgy is simpler, and we don't have the problems of acid supply that you're hearing about in Kazakhstan, for instance. So just want to highlight the resources that we have here. 7.37 million inferred pounds at the moment. with 5.71 at our Lo Herma project. We have some fairly significant exploration targets on top of that. At Lo Herma, at the top end of the range, an additional 10 million pounds, and across the other projects, an additional 9 to 10 million pounds. So up to an additional 20 million pounds on top if we were able to bring in the top end of our exploration targets. And that doesn't include anything for our Green Mountain project, which we know has mineralization. We've done geophysics, and we have a drill permit application in process, but none of that is in these numbers either. So the projects are in a jurisdiction that is very favourable to uranium mining, with a long history of in situ recovery uranium mining. So it's a place we can get things done, and we believe our projects are approaching a scale which can be commercial, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So in this map that we're looking at here, Casper in the middle is an oil and gas and mining town. There's a lot of coal mining around here, masses of oil and gas. There's a few wind farms and bits and pieces. So Wyoming is the second largest energy state in the US after Texas, and the largest coal mining state. What we've got on this map is all of the uranium facilities that are permitted. We've got Rio Tinto down in the bottom corner, and you've got Peninsula right up in the top right-hand corner. The Rio Tinto project down on the left, that was a conventional mill. It's now been mostly rehabilitated. And up in the top right-hand corner, that is an in-situ recovery project at Peninsula, the Lance project, but it's an acid project. And I'll explain a little bit more about why that's acid, and everything else in the basin is alkaline. But if you go down to the bottom left-hand corner where our Great Divide Basin project is there, the yellow dot, you'll see Lost Creek next to it. That's UR Energy's producing plant. And if you go up towards Casper, there's a project there called the Shirley Basin project. That is an £8 million project, and it's currently being built and developed by UR Energy, and the feed will be trucked. The resin beads will be trucked down to Lost Creek. If you look over to above Lost Creek, there's the Encore's Gas Hills satellite project. That is an £8 million project also, and it's part of Encore Energy's development pipeline. And so what we're trying to do at Lo Herma, which is just to the north of Casper and slightly to the east, is define at least an £8 million project there, which we believe we can put a scoping study around for development. And in amongst the neighbourhood of UEC, UR Energy, Energy Fuels, and Cameco, we believe that we're in a good spot to do that. And just this next chart just highlights who's back in production. UR Energy is producing now. UEC is due to be producing in August. We think Energy Fuels is slated to start again next year in August, and we've got Peninsula that are targeting being in production this year. Not sure what Cameco's up to. We'll wait and see. So the big events for the company for 2024, we're currently conducting resource development drilling at Lo Herma. We've reported our first 10 holes. We started just in the back end of July. Those results were very encouraging, quite outstanding results actually. What we're trying to do there is expand the resource so that we can then do a scoping study, and off the back of updating our mineral resource in the back end of this year. So that's our kind of primary activity at the moment. We conducted a placement a few weeks ago, and we've just launched a rights issue for our shareholders to raise up to 2.04 million. It's underwritten to 1.6 million, so that's due to open. I think the ex-date's the end of this week. The record date be the Monday following, and then so we've got a period where that's going to be open shortly. We've got a drill permit waiting to be granted at Green Mountain. We expect that sometime in the next couple of months. We're not sure if we will drill this year at Green Mountain, but it certainly puts us on a path to be able to drill that should the time be right. We're doing a bit of work down our Utah projects just to look at ways we can commercialise and improve on those. And we're always looking at a bit of M&A. So I'm not sure how I'm going for time here, Harry. I probably need to get a jog on. I've got a couple more minutes.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So just on the Lo Herma drilling, as I said, targeting resource growth, both along trend and at depth, and I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about that. Up to 76 holes there, of which 5 are potentially going to be built into water monitoring wells or groundwater monitoring wells. We'll also get some core samples to do some metallurgical work, and as I said, update the resource estimate, and then hopefully be into a scoping study towards the end of this year. So on this chart, you can see, on this map, you can see these highlighted areas in pink and red, where we are exploring a long trend. And then, so we had a database for this project of around 1,700 drill holes, or slightly more than that. And we were able to digitize that and bring it into resource very quickly last year. Then we drilled some holes at the back end of last year to verify the data, and also just to test some of our exploration ideas, both along trend and at depth. And that set us up for the program this year. So that what we're doing this year is drilling 76 holes in addition to the 880 that already sit within the resource. So you can see in terms of an exploration project, it's very advanced, and it's much more of a resource development project. And what is interesting is that, you know, there aren't any of our neighbours, other than the big companies that are already on that map with permitted facilities. There's no free-range explorers, if you like, with resource pounds, and certainly not ISR resource pounds, where we stand out in that respect. So looking at the geology, the historical work was done back in the 70s and drilled down to about 300 or 400 feet on average. They were still looking at conventional mining back in those days. But that Fort Union formation, which is the second one down after the Wasatch, that is the formation that Cameco produce out of, you know, around 10 miles, 14 k's to our east. So we know there's potential in the deeper part of the Wasatch Formation. We've already picked up mineralisation there, and we know there's potential down in the Fort Union. And part of this program is to test some of that a bit more, and hopefully we can use that to improve the resource. Just want to reflect quickly on some of our neighbours. I touched on GTR Energy and the Shirley Basin project, and as you can see here, I think it's 8.8 million pounds of resource. And they've got a capex on it of $40.7 million. That's a recent PEA, which is the equivalent of a scoping study in North America, and using a uranium price of $82 to $86. They've got an NPV of $120 million and an IRR of 83, close to 84%. The Gas Hills project at the bottom of the table, very similar size, lower capex, and this is an older study, 2021, with a lower uranium price, but you can see that the NPV and the IRRs for these things are very good. They're quite quick to get into production relatively, and the capex is modest compared to most mining projects. All-in sustaining cost for these things is around the $30 to $40 mark, maybe $45 if you're doing an acid project like Peninsula is, but generally against a uranium price of $80, they make really good money. So just to finish off on the rights issue, underwritten to $1.6 million. The share price of the offer is 0.004, and there's a free attaching option on a 1-for-3 basis, ex-date the 9th of August and record date the 12th of August. Just want to highlight a couple of people that we've added to the board. Matt Hartman is an ISR specialist, lives in Denver, and has had roles at various in-situ recovery projects and uranium projects around the world, including some of our neighbours. For instance, he's worked on Cameco's Smith Ranch Highland before, Laramide's Church Rock, those sorts of things. So he's a great addition to the board, both from a commercial and a technical, but also, a commercial point of view. And then Simon Williamson recently joined. He was the managing director of Cameco for 13 years in Australia, and so he's very au fait with taking projects through that feasibility stage and developing those assets so that they get them ready for production. Obviously, they've had a bit of a standstill there because of the WA uranium mining policy, but he's had lots of great experience and has great connections around the world in the uranium business. So current market cap about $12 million, give or take. Ordinary shares on issue after the rights issue will be around 3 billion. That'll leave us with, on a pro forma basis, around $5 million of cash, although you have to note that we are spending it at the moment because we're drilling. So where we'll end up, we'll have to see. So that's a very quick whiz through the company. As I say, not full detail, but within a 10-minute space of time, hopefully that gives you a flavour, and I'd love to deal with any questions that you might have.
Very good. Thanks, Bruce. That was very insightful. Yeah, we'll get some questions coming through the Q&A, I'm sure. We had a few questions prior to the webinar, and I've got a few questions of my own. First question was a very good question. What do you think the future vision, both short term and long term, for GTI Energy holds?
Yeah, that's obviously a very important question. Look, short term is our job is to put more meat on the bones with respect to the Lo Herma project in particular. We have an opportunity to increase the size of the resource, increase the confidence level of the resource. We know we'll be able to bring some of the pounds into indicated category after this drill program, and then move it to the point where we can put a scoping study around it and show the potential for its economics. Now, there's a lot of things we can't control, and the last couple of days have been fairly visceral around. We've had a very visceral experience of that around the markets, and we also know that the uranium price is volatile. So whilst we can't control all of those things, and a lot of those things, what we can control is where we invest our money, and what we'll do during the short term, and I guess if we look at that sort of 6 to 12 month period, is focus on getting a scoping study out for the project. The longer term, once we've got that scoping study, is a little hard to be specific about, as you'll appreciate, but that, if we do have that economic case around the project, it puts options in front of us in terms of then staffing up to go through the full permitting process whilst we continue to build the size of the resource. There's possibly some partnering opportunities. There's a lot of companies in our neighbourhood who are either back in production, getting back in production, and want a pipeline of long-term stable uranium supply for utilities. They're really looking for 10 and 20 and 30-year relationships. I don't know of any of the uranium companies that really seriously expect to have a long-term future selling into the spot market. Despite UEC saying that's what they're going to do, I believe that they will be looking for long-term contracts with utilities. And so that's really where the focus is.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question, what emerging trends in the energy sector do you think will have the most impact on GTI Energy's business?
Yeah, look, there's a few fairly obvious ones that are probably well understood. One is just the growth in the demand for electricity. You can't electrify everything, move away from other energy sources without increasing demand for electricity. And as we can see all over the world, there is, it's a struggle to do that with a carbon-free, source, emissions-free source. And nuclear power is I think out of 19 out of the 20 most developed and leading countries in the world, Australia is the only one that isn't doing it. So if you look at everybody from even Ghana in Africa is looking at doing it. We've got Bangladesh with nuclear power, the Indians, the Chinese, and I can go on. So the response to the demand for clean electricity, and just a growing demand for electricity in general, is leading most clever and developed economies and developing economies to reach for everything, and nuclear power is part of that. The other ones that's really obvious at the moment is artificial intelligence, and I think the US have talked about an increase of up to 20% in the demand for electricity just due to artificial intelligence and data centers, and that is a massive change. If you look back the last 15, 20 years, electricity demand has been relatively flat in the developed economies. But if you look at all those economies that are exposed to AI and actually run data centers, they are all projecting a very, very significant increase in the demand for electricity. And even based on flat demand, it's a bit hard to see how we're going to do that with windmills and solar panels and the fragility that builds into the grid. So I think those are two really significant factors that play into the demand for electricity and nuclear power. Now, there are a number of others, obviously, but I think those are the ones that really stick out for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess tying into your answer to that question, as CEO, what do you think excites you the most about the potential for the future for GTI Energy?
Yeah, look, what excites me is seeing um, both sides, and you can call that all sides of politics almost in the US, 100% bipartisan support for building out nuclear capability in the US. And if you go back to the 1980s when uh, the, um, the nuclear power industry started its decline, really, but more in the last 10 or 15 years when utilities were thinking about shutting off, where they were actively turning off reactors. 25% of the fleet was sub-economic because all the subsidies were going to wind and solar. If you look at the transformation in the US, where they're now saying they want to, double and triple the supply of nuclear power. That is very, very exciting for a uranium and nuclear fuel supply chain that has been dead in the water for close to 30 years. So that is very exciting. And I think also I'm excited about the fact that I believe it's a fantastic solution to supplying very reliable, very clean, very ecologically friendly electricity, compared to all of the other possibilities. The only one that comes even close is gas-fired power. So, I'm tremendously encouraged for humanity that this is happening. I think it's not just from a point of hubris because I am involved in the uranium supply business, but I think it's very encouraging that we're getting to the point where it's being talked about in Australia, but executed all over the planet. I think the nuclear future is a really exciting one.
Absolutely. I completely agree there. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your presentation. And thank you for all of our attendees. As mentioned at the start, this webinar recording will be posted on YouTube later. And we hope to see you all in a future webinar. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Great. Thanks, Harry. And thanks everyone for taking the time to watch and listen.
Perfect. Thank you.